Yo. So I've been struggling with something for probably about the last 2 weeks. I've been thinking back and forth on what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it. And what I'm talking about is I'm struggling with, the idea of when I actually decide to, or when I actually make the decision that I'm going to transition, probably not full time, but, at least part of the year. When I make the transition in a couple years into relocating to Kenya, right? And I know that it's kind of a rush because I was only been there once. I definitely need to go back a few more times, but I've only been there once. It was for a limited time, and sometimes when you go different places, you kind of get like this honeymoon phase, and everything seems perfect. But I'm old enough to know better. And it wasn't that when I went there. It wasn't, I wasn't just wrapped up in the moment. I've been to other places and I've seen other things. It's not my first time out of the country. But I'm struggling with this thing, and I'm in business now, right? I've been in business. I've been an entrepreneur, full-time entrepreneur for over 10 years plus. And I told myself that I would never get a brick and mortar business. So I would never have like a physical business where people are coming in and out of, regardless to what that type of business is. I said I didn't want to ever be locked into one specific place. And for the longest time, that's pretty much been true. In my business now, industry I'm in now, I'm not necessarily locked here, but all of my business is done locally, right? So I'm only saying that, right? I'm just giving you context into what I'm talking about. When I went to Kenya, I noticed there's two different paths that I could go down. I could do a brick and mortar, which I said I wouldn't want to do, or I could do digital, right? I can do a digital business, which is more attractive for a lot of different reasons. If I'm being honest, I think I would have to plan it out, but I think a brick and mortar would be more beneficial to people as far as being able to provide jobs. But doing something digitally, is cool too. It'll provide a lot of jobs, and I think it would allow me to scale a lot quicker. But, sometimes you go back and forth thinking on, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to do that, what direction I'm going to go in general. And sometimes, I know for me, it's always been a thing where if I let myself, I will overthink a lot, right? I'll overthink a lot of things. And, that'll cause me to really not do anything. But I was sitting up, I'm sitting back here right now, playing with, I got where is she? My Doberman somewhere around here. There she goes. Sitting in my backyard, and I was just sitting here thinking about, some of the things that I experienced when it came to Kenya, or when it comes to Kenyans in general, right? Some of the things I experienced. And I want to say this before I really dive into this story. I don't need to leave the U.S. Like, my life is, I'm not rich by any means, but my life is pretty good. Like, I've built, a pretty solid life. My kids are good. Wife's good, family's good, we're good. So it's not like I have to leave. I'm running away from something, I'm trying to escape something. But as I'm putting everything together, right, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about a couple of different instances that I had in my life in regards to Kenyans. And what it really all boiled down to was there's a certain level of resiliency that I've noticed within the Kenyans that I've met here in the U.S. and overseas, but I'm going to break it all down, right? So my first instance, this was well over 10 years ago. It's maybe 12 years ago. I was working at a place where it was a male-dominated place, right? It's a lot of men around. And, when you around that much testosterone, there's going to be a lot of ego. There's going to be a lot of, It's just a locker room. It's a big locker room, right? And with men, I can't speak for every country or every culture, but here in the U.S., when there's a lot of guys around, we gonna talk shit about each other. There's gonna be jokes flying. This is just what we do, right? So I'm working with just a bunch of guys from all over the place, different countries, different cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities, so on and so forth. But there's this one guy that I'm working with, and everyone was calling him the doctor. Like, yeah, there's that guy, he's a doctor. Like, he's a doctor. What the fuck's he doing working here, right? So anyways, I'm telling you the part about the jokes because it's important. So whenever I'm around this guy, and we had met after a certain amount of time, he's a Kenyan guy. Everyone's joking. We're all joking. Everyone's joking. But he would always end up being the butt of the joke, right? And there would be a group of guys that would single him out. Not if he was returning the jokes, it would be in all fun, but he would never return jokes. He would just kind of laugh it off, and it was like, okay, guys, it's enough. Like, he's not joking. Not that he's serious either, but it was just like he didn't know that part of that particular culture, right? With the jokes and everything. So I would even in some cases have to stand in and defend him in certain instances where it's like, I'm not gonna fight no one for you, but I'll tell jokes on your behalf, at least to back them up off of you, right? So anyways, I asked him, I'm like, hey man, like, why do you let these guys like continuously joke on you? You got to say something back, because if you don't say anything, they're just going to continue to do it, right? And he's like, don't worry, I know how to handle these guys. I'm like, okay. So anyways, one night, me and him, we ended up working together, working a graveyard shift. And, I'm starting to ask him, like, he's learning about me, I'm learning about him. And I'm asking him about this whole doctor thing. Like, yo, what's up with this whole doctor thing? Everybody call you the doctor. So he breaks it down. He tells me, he's like, yeah, back in Kenya, I was a doctor. But when he came to the U.S., like, all of his credentials didn't transfer over, right? So all his credentials didn't transfer over. So he wasn't able to become that type of doctor here. He needed more school. So I'm like, okay. I said, well, so I want to know more, right? Like, how'd you end up here? Why you here? So he breaks it all the way down. He ended up taking the job. It was a state job. And in the state, they will do tuition reimbursement, at least at that time. I don't know if they do it anymore, but they would do tuition reimbursement. If you're going to go to school to do something in that you could, if you're going to go to school to do something like within the field which you were working in. So he took advantage of it. So this guy at the time, he was older than me now, but at that time. So I'm in my early 40s. He was in like his mid 40s. And he had to not only go back and finish his bachelor's degree. So maybe it was like another 2 quarters or whatever it was that he needed to get in order for the bachelor degree units to transfer over. But he had to also go back and do medical school all over again. And I'm asking him, like, damn, man, like, you're going to go back to medical school and do that all over? He was like, yeah, I'm used to the prestige. I'm used to, and that's what I like. I like the prestige. I like being a doctor. I like doing this. I like doing that. So he was really willing to put himself through that all over again, even though, I know that it wasn't going to cover all of it. All the tuition reimbursement wasn't going to cover everything. He had to come out of pocket some. I don't know exactly how much it was, but it was enough for him to say, yes, I've gone through this before. I'm about to do it again. And I'm going to get the title, and this time no one's going to be able to take it away from me, right? And I always looked at him and I admired that, because that's a level of determination and tenacity that at that time I didn't have. I didn't have that, or at least it showed up different for me in my life. But I always looked at that and I was like, damn, that's pretty dope. So he was like, so I got to the part where I'm like, yo, well, okay, well, you say you always know how to handle these guys. Now we switch over and we're talking about, the joke situation. And he's like, yeah, I know how to handle these guys. He's like, listen, these guys, they don't got nothing else to do. They're here, and this is their careers, and they're going to be here for the next, until they decide to retire. But I got to stay focused on what I'm here for and what my mission is, and then move on from there. In 10, 15 years, those guys still going to be there. And, I had to respect it. I was like, I said, that's, and he was much older than us at the time, so he was wiser. But I honestly had to look back or sit back and just respect his opinion and respect where he was coming from, because, we didn't have that foresight, right, back then. Let's move on to the second story, right? After I quit that job, I went on and I started my cleaning business. But when I started my cleaning business, I started through a franchise. So when I started through the franchise, one of the biggest people that was making the most money at the time was this Kenyan guy. It was his company. And I think at the time he was probably doing maybe like $9,000 or $10,000 a month. And I was doing maybe $2,500, $3,000 at max per month. So me and him, we go in to go pick up our checks. And I ask him, I'm like, man, how are you doing this? Because I'm still new. I'm like, how many people do you have working for you? So I'm asking him, like, man, how do you do that? How many people do you have? Because, it was such a big number to me at the time. And he's telling me, he's like, man, like, you want me to be honest with you? He's like, I only have myself. He's like, he works by himself. He doesn't have a crew. And I know even now, to make $9,000 a month by yourself, you working. Like, you finna be working a whole lot, even in this industry. Now, he would do things that was obviously beneficial, right? He would do a lot of the specialty jobs and things like that would pay him a lot more money. But you're still busting your ass 7 days a week, right? 6, 7 days a week. That's what you're doing. Now, it wasn't until I actually went to Kenya and I realized that the norm is to work 6 days a week. But in the U.S., it's not normal to work 6 or 7 days a week as a regular worker, right? When you have a business, your business could be open 7 days a week. It don't matter because you're not there actually working it, or at least you get it to the point where you're not actually working it. But I was able to connect the dot, like, damn, that's where that work ethic comes from, because he's used to working like that. So that was the second story. I'm like, man, if this guy comes over here and he's willing to put the work in, and he's grinding, he has grit, he has tenacity, he's doing all of those things, I said, there's no reason why I can't do it too. And that really was one of the motivating factors that put the battery in my back that allowed me to just go that much harder, right? So the rest is history. I was able to do what I was able to do within the industry, but he was definitely someone who motivated me to show me, like, yo, this is possible. Now, he didn't show me exactly everything he was doing, but just to be in proximity to someone who was, doing numbers like that back then was a huge help. Okay, so let's fast forward to present day, right? Or at least my trip to Kenya. So I get to Kenya. I get there at night, wake up the next morning, and I call my Uber driver, and we're going around. I talked about that in another video. And it's crazy that I forgot about this part until I was back here actually, sitting down, thinking and figuring out what I'm going to do. But one of the conversations that we had, he was telling me about his future and what he wants to do, with his travel business and his tours and everything that he wants to put together. He was telling me about it, and he asked me what I do. I'm telling him what I do, and he has some cool ideas, and it was just a really cool exchange, because we're able to have a different level conversation, because even though he wasn't technically in the role of an entrepreneur, he's an entrepreneur, right? He's there. He just has to put together the other pieces to make it all the way official. But anyways, so we're talking, I'm telling him what I do, and he's like, man, you could move here and you can open your own hospital. And I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like, what the hell, a hospital? I said, that's not even in the line of, I'm not even in the field of, I don't do that kind of work. And he was talking, and he's like, yeah, man, all you have to do is do this, and you connect that, and hire this person and that person. I'm like, well, you know what? I guess it's kind of true. Like, I could really just, bring in contractors. I got doctors, nurses, and all these different people. I don't know how that business would look, but theoretically, that in my mind, in the way that he was explaining it, that's kind of how it's set up. So it's like, no one's ever suggested to me something so big, right? Something so huge. But to him, it was like, yo, that's possible to do. You could do that. And I probably could do it. But I don't know what kind of I don't know what kind of, red tape I would have to go through. I know that for foreigners coming into Kenya, the cost of entry to do business or to have a business and to be legal is pretty high. It's nowhere near what it is here. Like in the US, or at least in my state, you want to open a business, there's not really that much you need. I mean, you could do it for under $500 easy. But there, I think I saw something that was like $100,000. And that's one of the things that I got to be sure on before I decide to move forward on anything. But anyways, he tells me, I could do that. And I'm kind of sitting in the back and I'm putting everything together. I'm like, yeah, that's not really what I want to do. But yeah, that I guess it could be possible. Yeah, I mean, people do it, so it could be possible. And I'm riding around and I'm seeing. See, one of the things that they don't tell you, and I hope it doesn't come off like I'm jumping all over the place, but this is how I'm processing it as I'm replaying everything back in my head and everything that I went through. But one of the things that they don't tell you, or no one told me, was the amount of. I saw a ton of Indians. I saw a lot. I think they were Indians. I don't know, they're Indian, Pakistan, somewhere. But I saw a bunch of them, and they're all doing business. I've seen a lot of Chinese. They're there. They're doing business. A lot of them are doing business, right? So that barrier to entry fee, they're figuring it out. They're coming together, and they're putting it together, and they're making it happen. But I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know it was going to be that many of them there. But it is, and it was, and they over there, and they're doing business, and they're doing big things. So the last thing that really drove it all home was, I was coming back from, I think it was like the Giraffe Center or the mall or something, or somewhere I was coming back from. And I finally get to the building I was staying at, and I'm talking to the security guard, right? We're there, we're laughing, we're cracking jokes. And, he's I'm asking him about a couple other places I should go check out while I'm there. And you know how you'll be ready to like end the conversation, but before you do, it's like, you could tell someone wants to ask you something, but they don't really know how to ask. So I'm kind of pulling away, but I'm like, what's up, man? Like, you want to say something? So he's like, yeah. He's like, I heard this, man. And he's like, tell me if it's true. I'm like, what's up? And he's like, I heard that if you, like in the US, like if you just work hard, that you could be successful. And I'm like, yeah, man. Like it kind of caught me off guard because I wasn't expecting him to ask me that. But at the same time, I wasn't finna lie to him. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yes, the regardless of what anyone else says, regardless of what you hear, none of that shit matters. The truth is that if you put in the work, yes, you could be successful. Is every door going to open when you knock on it? No. Sometimes somebody might open the door and slam it in your face. But if you knock on enough doors and you wake up and you keep grinding, you keep hustling, you keep getting to it, you will reach your goals. And that goes for anybody. And for me, it's like, I don't know, because I'm from here, where parents, grandparents, great grandparents, like we're from here. It's almost like I don't even think about that. It's just like waking up in the morning and I know that there's just certain shit that I don't have to think about, and that's just one of them. But I told him, I'm like, yeah, man, the truth is like, yeah, if you come here and you work hard, you put the work in, you can really have whatever you want, get whatever you want. That doesn't mean that all obstacles are just going to magically vanish from your path, but yeah, you can really get what you want. And he kind of sat back like, wow, like, and it really kind of humbled me, but at the same time motivated me, because on these 3 different stories with these Kenyan people, let me know that, if you want it, you can get it, right? If you really, really want it, you can go after it and you can get it. So regardless as to what I decide to do, when I decide to do it, if I really decide to do it, talking about going to Kenya, relocating to Kenya, at least for part of the year. I don't know if I would do it full time. I still got a lot of stuff going on here in the U.S. that I'm just not gonna break, detached from. I still got things going on. But whatever it is that I decide to do, I know that with the work ethic of the Kenyan people, the spirit of the Kenyan people would be behind it 100%. And then also too, like it'll give me the opportunity to provide jobs. You know what I mean? It'll give me opportunity to provide jobs, provide a living, because I wouldn't go there to take a job. That's the other thing too. I saw some people there that wasn't from there. That was, I feel like the jobs in Kenya should be for Kenyan people. That's my own personal thing. I feel like that. When I was down there, I made sure that when I purchased from Kenyan business owners. I did stay in an Airbnb, which is, I think it's a Canadian company, maybe it's an American company, but a Kenyan guy owned the unit. You know what I mean? Like those things like that are important. But I don't want to make this video go on longer than what it needs to go on. But the main takeaway from this is, you know what I mean? Whatever it is that you choose to do, if you work hard, you can get to it. And then also to, life ain't always about being able to just take stuff. What can you give? What can you provide? So one of the biggest things for me, if I do decide to go, is being able to provide jobs, just the same way I provide jobs here, right? Be able to provide jobs for people. But my question is, if you made it this far in the video, here's my question. What industry would you suggest a foreigner to get into in Kenya? What industries do you need? What would you like to see more of? What would make it a better place? To me, I think it's perfect. In all honesty, I for what I like and for what I want, I think Kenya's it's a perfect place. It has a little bit of everything, from what I saw, and I was just in a small section of the country. But like I said, I don't want to make this video go on. I can keep rambling on and on and on. What do you guys need? What do you want? What would you like to see more of? As far as things within the country, if I were to come in, what areas would be most beneficial for me to contribute? But man, that's it for this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.